I always have to do two because
Recording is on.
Okay, cool.
Fantastic. Great. All right. So thanks for bearing with me here. Yeah. So what I managed to do over the weekend is also to collect my thoughts and start preparing to kind of give you a bit of a story of sort of the flow of my thinking here. First of all, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Great. So, all right. So guys, so what's happening here is basically, to give you a bit of context, I'm a user researcher and I work in fintech, in a fintech space. I do a lot of work with some startups. I'm an advisor for Moneymail, which is a sort of NFT-like service providing in-chat value transfer. So it's kind of like GIFs, but transferring GIFs with attached values, which is really the perception of money. I've been in Bitcoin since 2017, so very interested in the space, fascinated by it. So it's an interesting kind of like you guys, very much in the UX space, very much interested in people, but then, interested in Bitcoin, which is something just very technological, right? But that said, I have worked previously on other projects. Let me pull it up. On other sort of research and kind of papers around really culture and the culture of Bitcoin. So there's one on the Balinese cockfights in Bitcoin. So my background is in anthropology and economics. So I very much like to try to blend these different industries and topics. And so in anthropology, talk a lot about Balinese cockfights as being a really interesting scenario to study, and we can learn a lot of the Bitcoin community. And so this is if we apply the same principles. And the whole point here is that Bitcoin is much more than speculation, right? So this is a paper really focusing on the Bitcoiners. But then it led me always to think, how do the outsiders to Bitcoin perceive us, right? And so one interesting way of seeing it is like, this native tribe to the Amazon being looked at by these Westerners who are looking in and seeing these people. And I sort of feel sometimes, I guess, Bitcoiners are a bit like, there's definitely a bit of tribalism involved. And Bitcoin itself is something very complex to understand. So how do people, outsiders, perceive it? And why is this important though, right? Because a lot of people will say, oh, people will just perceive Bitcoin in whatever they want to weigh, whatever means they want. But these are just opinions, right? And opinions come and go, and they fade, and opinions are not important. Well, opinions are not that important in the short run for Bitcoin, I think, but they're not important in the long run, actually. But in the short run and in the medium run, I think there's a learning curve to Bitcoin. And at some point, if we are right about Bitcoin and Bitcoin's importance and the fact that it's a financial revolution, then at some point, everyone's going to have to onboard, right? It's just a matter of when. And if we try to understand how people perceive it from the outside, we can have a much better time at getting people on board, at holding their hand, understanding their perspective, helping them understand, no, this is not a tool for money laundering, because it's more transparent than any ledger available. It's cash is used much more for money laundering and terrorism than Bitcoin, right? So there are many kind of complexities to it, and people often choose to see it as this black ominous thing. So I think that's what interested me about it, and it is very important, because if we understand the perception, it's really the first touch point to then the subsequent UX questions, like like it's really the thing that impinges everything else. There's this idea in psychology that belief then impacts behavior, right? Your beliefs of something then impact whether you buy it, it impacts whether you even try to buy it, It impacts how you talk about it with your friends. So beliefs really should be seen as the core cornerstone of this project here, and yet so little has been done, right? So to kind of try to contextualize and to bring and materialize everything I've done so far, said so far, the study is really focused on perception of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin space or community. Perception precedes and influences the user's mental models and shapes the user's relationship with and experience of Bitcoin from the very beginning of their journey in Bitcoin. Understanding this perception then and mental models and mental blockers can help us improve how Bitcoin companies speak to, relate with, and build for outsiders. And actually, I haven't done this yet, but there is here another slide, really. There should be another slide, because there's some stats that are really good about, like, basically the markets. And then you have, so people, I think if you look at people that are aware of Bitcoin's existence, something like 90% of people have at least heard of Bitcoin. And I think we can use this as a stat from Saudi Arabia, which I saw recently. 90% of people have heard of Bitcoin. And then I think only 3% have actually bought it. So sorry if I'm doing this live, but just sort of to give you a sense that it's a really, really, really small number of people that have not bought it versus those who've heard of it. So, and this is because the believers are probably also very much small. So how does everyone else perceive it? I think that's really, really important question. And there's a massive market, and there's a massive reason why we should study it because of this, right? So before I go any further, without boring you too much longer, do you guys have any questions?
What's the best way for us to leave questions for you in the chat or live here in a separate document later? I know you have to go because I want you to be able to say everything, and I know you have to leave. So just tell us what's best.
I know. This, it's really a shame. I'm terribly sorry. I'm happy to have another call in the next few days as well.
It's all good. It's really fine. Yeah.
I think we can we can just freestyle, like, just if you have questions, shout out, and then you can always follow up with Mick after in Slack or elsewhere if you have more questions and stuff.
Absolutely. And what I've also done is that, let me then, feel free to kind of add, if any questions, you can write to me directly in the chat on the Slack or even on the public space. That's perfectly fine on my comment section.
I have a comment. This is very good. I feel like I was just having discussions with people a few days ago actually around kind of this. It's like you say, there's still such an untapped market with regards to like how do people actually view Bitcoin, and I feel like there's an absolute gap for onboarding beginners who are non-technical, non-design based, don't have any real perhaps technical savviness or proficient in technology in any way. Like we don't have any, whether it be sort of presentations or like guides we can give for true beginners. So it's definitely understanding how they think in the first case is going to be quite useful in building any type of project that kind of caters to that kind of person.
Exactly. I also like to think about it as really the first principles approach, right? This is like, what are all the possible ways that newcomers challenge with it? And because I've been in Bitcoin now more than 3 years, and a lot of us have, and once you enter and you go down the rabbit hole, you kind of forget what it was like, right? You kind of forget all the challenges and questions you had, right? So, there's a need here. So what I've done so far is, I put up the GitHub with the kind of the motivations and the context and aims and objectives. So I've already described the aims, right? Really trying to understand perception of people, of I'm calling them outsiders now, rather than no coiners. And so the way that I thought about doing this is that because everyone's busy, right? But I do have a full-time job, so I would love to kind of do interviews and in-depth studies. As an anthropologist, I'd like to, speak to people, of course, but I also thought there's a potential here just to do a really, really simple survey and throw it out on Twitter and online, and have everyone who's available and interested to explore these questions share. Have Bitcoiners share it with their own families and their own friends. I'm sure they have many friends and family who still don't have troubles with Bitcoin, right? Have trouble understanding it. So that was sort of the idea of the strategy of how to make it scale. And I love your input on this. Yeah, so the idea was to have a Google survey, a few questions, and really send it out. I started also thinking through some of the hypotheses. It's important to kind of think through some of these, like what would really be the perceptions for closed outsiders, open outsiders. Excuse me. Sorry, this is a bit still work in progress. And then there's a research structure, which is the Excel, which I'm happy to show you in a second. It's this one here. No, it's not this one.
I'm curious, while you're finding it, sort of what your next steps are. This is obviously a huge project and a really big goal that will change over time and sometimes really quickly. I'm wondering what you're hoping to do with the information you get and where you want to go next. Yeah, I'm just curious.
Really good question. Yeah. So this is this survey, and let me get straight to. And this is where I've shared it, and I want to make all of you commenters and hear your thoughts. And if there's better ways of asking these questions, better way of structuring them, happy to get your thoughts on that. But to go back to your question, so what are the possible outputs here, right? And first of all, like the question, what possible insights can emerge from this? And I think really perception is very much about mental models, right? And I really do think here we can build a mental model map of all the key challenges, like perceptual challenges and blockers that people have, right? And to give you an example, one might be the belief that Bitcoin is used by terrorists, right? Or it's used for tax evasion. And look, some of them may be right, some may be wrong. I'm not pretending that Bitcoin is just going to be, it's just a source for good. I'm sure it can be used for many malevolent purposes as well. But we're trying to kind of put really our shoes and our minds inside of people's shoes and minds here. So a survey can really help us elicit a lot of different perspectives that we can try then to organize, piece together, and create a cohesive mental model map, really, of people's belief to Bitcoin. This then can help us understand what are the mental blockers to adoption. We can kind of get some of the challenges and pain points to onboarding Bitcoin. We can then do journey maps of challenges to getting Bitcoin, right? You could even do, sorts of journey maps for that. And so who might be interested? And I think this is where any company building on Bitcoin, exchanges, wallet providers, node providers. And in terms of the specific output, I think there's many possible things, right? We could do we can write a white paper. We could have an infographics. We could have tweet threads sent out, presentation packs, presentations to stakeholders and Bitcoin companies, podcasts. I don't know. I think there's a lot to be done. It's an amazing community you guys created at Bitcoin Design, and I love how researchers are an integral part of that. I'm proud of that as a researcher myself, and I want to try to. I think I see the potential, and I want to try to, push this side of things and make research not just a technical engineering one, although that is absolutely key. But I think trying to understand then how Bitcoin fits with people, helps people out, and how Bitcoin can help, and how the design community can help bring people closer to Bitcoin through these sorts of research, I think is really, really important. But obviously all of these has question marks. All of this has question marks for you guys to contribute to, ask questions about. Yeah, and that's it. So yeah, feedback and collaboration. Anyone interested in collaborating? How does the Bitcoin design community want to help? How can this research support the Bitcoin design community as well? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. And then what other outputs can this research take? Where do you see the value? Where do you see the potential? There might be things that I'm missing here. So yeah, so perhaps, I mean, there's more detail here on the specific questions, which I'd love to hear your thoughts on. I think some people have already been supporting me. Jelena was here, and Molly provided some input into the Excel, into the structure. So we can definitely talk a little bit more in the details, but I am conscious of time, and so in the last 10 minutes, perhaps we could just have a chat and hear your thoughts and see who's interested and what ideas you might have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Mick. Very good. Any thoughts, guys?
I have some thoughts, but I feel like I don't know how productive they are, Mick. I've just been thinking, because Christoph posted something today about like Americans being aware that Bitcoin exists. And I think about the people I actually interact with. I'm also in medicine. A lot of them are super old. We have a huge baby boomer generation, and I think they could be aware that it exists, but also have no interest or idea, or just they're on their way out. They're just trying to hang in there. Like, so I wonder, like, of the information you collect where people are aware of it, like when we talk about application and people could use it for, you know, various things, whether it be research or business interests or whatever. Are you hoping that people will be active in the ecosystem, or that they'll be contributing, or that they'll be buying their first Bitcoin? Because I think it's so broad, like being aware that it exists, and then what do you do with that information? I know my grandma knows, and it's just like a whole situation. She was, yeah, I don't know. You get where I'm going with this.
I think it's a really good point, which is we assume that once there's perfect information, people will go out and buy it, right? But that's not the case. I know plenty of people, my parents as well, who talk to Bitcoin all the time about it, and then still, you know, it took them a long time to really make that step and buy it. So we should definitely not assume that information is the only, like, that providing information about Bitcoin is the only catalyst and trigger to buying it. I think we should take that the default should be neutrality and learning about it, and then because a lot of people will have little to actually, will take time to buy it and to get it, right? But I think it's a really good point.
No, go ahead.
Sorry for interrupting you. I spoke with Mick about some stuff last week about the questions and about the flows. Patricia, you're right about saying that we have the generation with a lot of baby boomers, and in a lot of developed countries, the population is getting old by itself. There's not a lot of young people that are reproducing, and that it has an effect. It also has an effect how people know about that. I worked in a company where we spoke to a lot of old people that know about Bitcoin and they are interested, but they don't know anything about that. So it would be good to have a perspective how they heard about it. Most people that I interacted with, they heard it on the news. But what did they hear about Bitcoin? Since they heard about it, they want to interact with it. It means that there were positive stuff. So what did they actually hear? Where did they hear that? There's a lot of people who are interested, let's say, in trading. And there are traditional traders that, for example, don't have a positive opinion about Bitcoin. That can also influence those people to not go in that direction. So there might be some question about how do you inform yourself about the news? Where do you read that? How, like, maybe they interacted with someone who is a Bitcoiner and that's why they are interested. So
I think that's
what I initially wanted to say.
No,
it's so true. It's so true. Like, when people hear negative headlines, they immediately ask if I'm in jail, like, all the time. So it's so true.
Yeah. So might be worth me sharing again the sheet here, because there's one question. So I try to also ask about like where is the influence coming here in terms of who is influencing these people. So here I do ask, sorry, where is it? I'm sorry. Yeah, who or what sources have informed your view of Bitcoin as well? So could be relevant to see. But so I don't know, what's worth doing for the last 5 minutes? Do you want me to kind of take you through the question? I think at a high level here, we have questions around like really trying to first of all subdivide them between those who are not aware, those who are aware and have not bought, and then those who bought. And then I asked them, you know, the outsiders being the main person we're interested in here. And then here we ask questions really about the perception. So like, what comes to mind when you think of Bitcoin? Can you list 3 things you know about Bitcoin to understand what do they know about it? Does Bitcoin evoke any feelings? How positively or negatively do you see Bitcoin? Do you have any views on why someone might buy Bitcoin? Who or what sources may have informed you? And then you have the bifurcation between those who are would-be open. So would you ever consider buying Bitcoin? Open or closed? I kind of realized that here you might have people who may have tried to buy it and did not succeed. So there might actually be a need for another column here. So I'll need to do that. Need to think about that actually. And then you have kind of moving forward into like the buying Bitcoin section. So like, what made you consider buying it? Did you ever experience challenges and blockers to buying it? Can you tell us a bit more about the last time you tried purchasing Bitcoin? What were challenges you experienced? And so,
hey, Mick, can I ask a question?
Please, yeah, go for it.
Hi, I'm Daniel here. This is awesome work, and that looks like a big spreadsheet, and I'm sure it's going to grow enormously.
Hopefully not too long, not too much.
Well, from the experience I had with reading research that my colleagues at Coinbase did at the time, some of the biggest questions for like no coiners, they were way earlier than, you know, questions about buying. It was more about, is this a scam, right? Is this even real, right? Why is this worth anything? Is it going to go to zero again? So it might be worth knowing if those are the people that you're focusing on. Buying is like maybe step 3 in their kind of thought process. As far as we kind of looked at it, you know, the first question people wanted to kind of feel good about was that like, okay, this is not a scam, right? This is actually a legitimate thing. And there were various things they needed to get to that point. The second thing was more like, is this for me, right? Okay, it might not be a scam, but maybe I shouldn't do it anyway. So the second step was for them to like feel like, oh yeah, could actually be for me, right? There's a reason why I should get involved. And then they were like, okay, you know, how do I get this stuff? So I think the part before might be bigger than we remember.
That's a really good point. Yeah, absolutely. Hence my need to really want to focus on the perception part, because exactly as you said, the question will be not the ones we will immediately associate, you know, think about, right? It will be exactly like you said. Is it a scam? Why should I care, right? So that's definitely what we want to try to capture. I think the buying part is probably more just related to those who have considered it, but I think you raised a really good point.
The reason I started thinking about that was when you got into the concrete questions, and maybe I haven't seen all of them, but you know, I would really try and
yeah, I think if I would
ask, for example, like, you know, what are your main concerns, or like more in that direction, like, you know, getting more of the issues before we get into the
That's a good point.
whys.
And one thing I would love to know, like just me personally, I would love to know like what people's like current education is. Like, what do they know? So, for example, do they think Bitcoin is private or not? Right? Because like people hear about cryptocurrency and Silk Road and this kind of thing, so it must be private then. So, or, like, do they know that it's a transparent ledger, for instance? And that's something that could really influence design. Right? Privacy could be one of them. Who's in control of Bitcoin could be another. You know, like one of those questions to figure out. Like, I think such kind of questions, like we could apply it to our user design, our UX design process.
I'm gonna just butt in quickly because we've got a minute left. So maybe Mick, do you wanna?
I can do another 5 minutes, no problem. But I also
cool.
take time from others.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, no
Before we
worries.
wrap up? Okay, cool. So I'm actually very excited here about the potential of the collaboration here. Let's say you have this group of people creating the survey, working together, and then if it's in a GitHub repo, some other people can translate it. You know, they can print it, they can put it in somewhere else. Some meetup people in Nicaragua can send it to their people and get feedback, and to create kind of a community-generated, crowdsourced source of information that can then be shared out again, evaluated by maybe this group of people that created this whole thing, but then be shared out again in a big way to everyone. I think that would be fantastic. And then if that works, then it would be easy to then create other surveys on top of that also. Maybe this is a good one to start, and then if that system works, could create other surveys as well that maybe dive deeper into some specific topics.
I love that. If anybody has any, or if you, Christoph, have any suggestions on a way to kind of create a to scale it, and I love the idea. I mean, that was the idea with GitHub, but I also realized that GitHub is tied to my Excel spreadsheet, and I know that's not the ideal way of doing it either. So if you have any thoughts on how, and any other tools we could use to help that scaling, that would be great.
I like the work that you're doing and all the different questions that you're generating. I wonder if part of this, and it's a kind of a suggestion, maybe a possibility. I wonder if part of this could be divided up into because sometimes surveys feel so long that they discourage people to answer. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's a way to say I've never heard about Bitcoin, and there's the survey for you, just very basic before they ever start buying. Or I have bought Bitcoin, but I haven't, had a good experience. I don't know how you can divide it up, or if there's any way to divide it up, but it's a possibility. The other thing I'm thinking of is that maybe this is something that we can think of also as part of the Bitcoin design guide, but in a way that we could not only gather your information, but kind of use the information, the kind of questions that you have, and in some way have the question and actually have the answer. Because sometimes you take these surveys and you don't actually know what the answer is. And it may be a good opportunity to take some of those things and actually help educate people. Thank you for sharing that. And if you could share that, I don't know, I didn't find the document, the Google Docs. So if you could share that on the chat, I'd love to look at it and see all the work.
You mean the presentation or the Excel?
Well, I was thinking of the Excel, but if you'd like to share the presentation, that would be fine.
Oh, yeah. No, that sounds good. I'll share it and make you, absolutely. I think you'd all be able to add comments to it as well. So that's perfect. And I love your comment. Just a quick thought though on the kind of dividing up the surveys. The way that I'd structured is that anybody can take it, right? So there's just one survey. I know it's a bit monolithic, but that way, I need to think about that actually. That's a good point. But the point though with having one is that anybody can take it, and then it sort of divides you in the relevant space, so that you can have only one to share. But I also see your point around if we have a specialized survey, then we can send it just to these people, right? How to think about that? That's a good point. I think you're on mute now. Alex, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. I don't know how you could make it, but maybe there's a way that at the top of the survey you could select which section you answer.
Do you mind?
If there's like an entire survey, but you could answer just a specific set and right at the top choose where you're at on your Bitcoin journey. I don't know.
Yeah, no, good call. I think the only reason why I might stick with this thing so far is that of just the ease of this is Bitcoin, the Bitcoin perception survey, and then anybody can take it, but it sort of leads you down the different segments. It just makes it so much easier. It makes it that a friend sends it to you rather than you having to kind of proactively go there and look for it. But it's a really good point, and I'll put it down, and definitely worth thinking about as well for the future.
Do you guys mind if I add something?
Sure. Last point.
I just suggested to make, I did send you the flow. It's one survey with 3 different flows. So based on how you answer the first question, have you heard of Bitcoin? You get different set of questions. So for outsiders that have never heard of Bitcoin, they have what kind of payment methods have you heard of? What payment methods do you use? What do you like? What do you dislike? And the questions that are related to them. Then for people who have heard of Bitcoin but never used it or bought it or anything, they have different questions. And then if they answer, yes, I heard of Bitcoin, they have a follow-up question, have you ever bought it? And then yes, and they have separate questions for holders and people who actually interacted with Bitcoin. So I can show you, but I think my batch is going to die in the 1 second.
We're probably going to have to stop there.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries. We're just running out a bit of time, but obviously feel free to catch up with each other after in the Slack and on the Jitsi after as well. But thank you so much, Mick, for sharing that with us. It looks like it can be a really good project to collaborate on, actually. So thank you for that.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. I'll add the Excel sheet on the Slack, and if anyone wants to add comments and contribute in any way, ping me a message. Ideally, next week we'll have another chat, and maybe we'll have wrapped things up by then. But
cool. Sounds good.
Thanks so much.
Cool. BitPaint, do you want to take us into the VR world now?
Hello. Hey, yes, we can do that. I'm just gonna share my screen.
This is our first 3D presentation on the Design Guide. I'm really excited to see this one.
Yeah, we need like a VR section for the Design Guide for sure.
Yeah, this is crazy.
So what I've been doing lately is some VR meetups, and we use both VRChat or Altspace VR, which is 2 different platforms to do that. And I've been realizing that, hey, I can actually build some stuff for just, have a place to meet. So that's what I did, and I learned a lot. We use Unity to do that. So it's another software that you create your whole environment into it, and then you can upload it on the VRChat server. So we just do some meetup here, but most interesting stuff is that you can access this in VR. So you can have this headset on and you can interact with stuff. I have like a little chessboard there, just to show you that you can interact with the stuff. So people can basically play chess. You need to have a headset on to do that. But this is like trying to do again what we do in the real life, just inside those VR worlds. And I think there's a more interesting thing going on there, which is about education. It's think about the cost of education for anything, and like most of it is due to physical necessity. Like you need to access a physical motor to try to repair it, or you need to access a chemistry laboratory to try to repair human bodies, and this is costly and stuff. So, and VR is certainly a way to jump into an environment where everything can be created almost for free, because like I could have put 10 chessboard and it would cost me nothing except a little bit of time, right? And then how do we apply that to Bitcoin is the next question. So I'm working actually on a project which is called the Rabbit Hole. It's an adaptation of 21 Lessons VR, which is a book by Del Gigi. And there is an audiobook version of it. So what I'm trying to do is to put the audiobook inside a VR world, which I'm gonna just jump into this one, and make it maybe an open project where people can help me add stuff. For now, it's just, you know, an audiobook. So if I click, it's gonna play and I can stop it. The environment is big enough to allow people to contribute. I choose this book because I think it's like a good resume for no coiners, and if people can jump into a world and place and learn about Bitcoin, but also other economic stuff, general like why. I think it's pretty interesting. So that's what I'm building. Jones invited me, so thank you, Jones, to just invite me to show you guys. As you can see, it's very basic. For now, there is nothing that is really different. It's an audiobook, but what I'm thinking about is like a project where people can learn about how Bitcoin works, like how you can sign a transaction, and if your signature is wrong, then it's not gonna be accepted, and you need to broadcast it, and you need to mine and stuff like that. So they can learn about pretty much anything, but in a different way. Those environments take a little bit of time to create, but I think if there is enough people willing to contribute, which is something doable with Unity, you can export your work and share it to other people. We could build something really amazing. So it's very early for now, but yeah, still some good stuff to do. Do you guys have any question?
Kind of, if it's okay. For an audiobook, I noticed you said you're in France. Is that right, on your website? Would you have this in multiple languages, or would there be a plugin that could suit maybe wherever the person has their VPN set up, or if their VPN is set up somewhere else than they are? I don't know, just trying to figure out.
So
I agree, education's important, but how can they understand it best, you know?
I took the audiobook, which is in English. Well, that's another part of. I've people contribute and have like a translation to it. For sure, I can create another version of this world, which is like anything, but with another language. Most of the stuff will be to create the audiobook, not to change it inside the world. So it's doable. In this specific application, I have to just fork my actual work and just change the file, so it will be a different world, but it's doable. So yeah, but I think we have to start with English, right?
Yeah, this is
Do we? Maybe.
I mean, I'm not sure.
We can do whatever we want. You can English, French, whatever. I'm excited either way. This is great.
Yeah, I think it's the language where we found the most content, right? Like I didn't have to record the audiobook. It was already there. It's actually a great content. Maybe people can translate it in other language. I think the book itself is already translated in other language. So maybe the other book audiobook is coming. We'll see.
I really like this social aspect that you were talking about earlier, and I'm thinking like how could you make like the education and stuff with the audiobook also social? Like maybe like if there's like these quiet rooms that people could go into and like discuss certain chapters, like what they learned and like tests and those kind of things, to bring that social aspect to it.
Well, you can. There's a guy who is doing this. It's not about Bitcoin, but it's about education. It's in VRChat, and I met him in VRChat actually, and it's pretty funny because you can imagine whatever you want and then create it. Social interaction in the learning environment is something great, but I think that we need to rethink like, okay, but what we can do with this new like tool? It's a tool. Like VR is completely different. You can, as said before, you can like build for free, and this is crazy. But people yet don't get it. And if you just program more stuff, like you can have like, okay, you start in a room, and this room have some question about you, and then depending on what you answer, you go, on the side or on the other side, and you can do it with other people. But I think more widely, what is interesting is that it allows us to create new kind of educational content. Because I'm still learning, by the way, I have nothing to do with game development, and I'm just doing this since 6 or 8 months. So it's just pretty basic, and I'm just starting to realize that no, I have to stop just trying to recreate old stuff and make it in VR. I have to create a new idea that actually you can only do in VR. But yeah, that's why I'm sharing this with you. It's very hard to. It's just like Bitcoin, right? There's a lot of stuff going on and what we can do with it. But I think here we have something interesting, and yeah.
I really like what you have going here. I like the idea that you go through a process and through 21 lessons. I wonder if, and I don't know if this already happens, but maybe as you pass each lesson, you earn something or you get to pick up something. And I don't know if that's something that happens in this world, or in this virtual world. But it would be interesting if you would be able to have a different kind of symbol that you'd pick up depending on the lesson or depending on whatever
Having
it is that's being
a
explained.
reward system, yeah, in general, yes, that would be great. Those are actually very nice idea, because yeah, people need to find like to think like they achieve something, and but for now it's not inside. But I think that's a nice idea. Actually, it's actually doable. You can do that.
Cool. And this is just for Windows, right? There's not.
So this application is it's called VRChat, and it's running on Windows, but also on Linux, I believe. But you need to install Steam and stuff. It's not running on Mac, sadly, or it's running on headset like Oculus Quest headset. The other way to interact with stuff in a very easy way is to use a WebGL plugin, which pretty much is you're gonna use your web browser to show the game. So you won't have some amazing graphics, but you can have actually a game and move around and do stuff. So, but actually, I'm still learning about that. But maybe VRChat is not the best place to host the stuff, because it's friction. People need to create an account and to figure out like, okay, how do I use this game? How do I interact with stuff? And it's not ideal, but it's where I've started. So, but maybe the best way in the future will be just to try to do something that is very light and put it in a web browser. So people don't need a powerful computer to run it. They don't need to install anything. They just like a Jitsi, right? They click a link and it's working.
I really like this little rabbit that you have there in the corner, the cute little rabbit. Like, what part does the rabbit have to play in this? Besides the name, does it like I don't know? Do you really follow it down the hole, or like?
Well, you have 3 different worlds, and so then you just jump into another one. So, and he's always there, but yeah, its decoration is just moving. And the last one is still, I'm still building this part. I have to split the world into 3 different, plays to. This one is just about just being started. But the rabbit should be here. Again, it's just that you need to put more time into it, but you can do whatever you want. You could actually follow the rabbit. He could speak to you, just like inside a game, right? But I'm just too much of a noob to do all this stuff alone, but I'm pretty happy with what I do.
The potential for this is so awesome, and I love that you're actually like going down this cave and stuff like that. It seems pretty like a dark. It's a dark cave though. It's a it's not a
Well,
it's not a grassy
the
cave.
rabbit hole, so dark there, right? It's scary to know
There's lava
to
there.
learn about the truth. It's scary, right?
Yeah, but there's lava there. And, like I hope at the end of that rabbit hole there's like some kind of, I don't know, Candyland or something.
Yeah, we still have to figure out, but I think the last portal for now is to the place where we meet.
Okay.
But,
Do you think
we'll
this will
see.
be used for because I have the book, I actually bought it. I'm very excited to read it.
Oh.
It's a lot of more like on the philosophical side, right? So do you think do you think something like this can be used for technical education as well? Because I was just thinking some people might not have seen it, but Alexa's done some illustrations around transactions and CoinJoin and used this kind of manufacturing euphemism. So I wonder if that can even be extended in something like a VR world, where if you want to learn about transactions, there's some kind of
Yes,
nice metaphor and euphemism.
I think it's the VR worlds are gonna be more useful to learn about the how you said it correctly, technology stuff than into the just philosophy. 21 lessons tell you a lot about why Bitcoin. Why is this? It could be useful. What's broken there? But trying to explain like a CoinJoin, whatever, to people without having stuff to show, it's very hard, and showing technical paper is just too complicated for them. So graphics and illustration inside VR, and actually stuff that you can interact with is going to be a huge part of it. So definitely yes, and 21 lessons is a good start, but I don't think audiobooks in general and even text are stuff that people love to interact inside a game or anything. They want to play something, they want to have an animation, and it have to be very easy and not boring.
It's I think that's part of the guide that we're kind of like maybe missing out on, is like maybe like the philosophical why kind of thing, and I'm not sure if it's like the place to do that. Bitpaint informed me like some months ago that to understand Bitcoin you need to understand money and like where it came from and stuff like that. In our earlier version we were talking about, and I was thinking that I don't know if there's a place for that in the guide if we get into that, but also this VR world can also like parallel stuff that's within the guide, like how transaction work, or how private keys get generated and stuff like that. So after you get like this could be like the introduction, and then in the end you start like interacting with the technology, and it's as you said, it's like so much possibilities of what you can do with it.
Possibilities. I was thinking about multiple worlds to do the history of money. So you start and you're very long time ago, and you use something as money, and then use something else. But I'm not sure what people really like to do. It needs to be actually enjoyable. I don't want to have something boring. So we will see, but at least you got this idea, guys. You know that it exists, and that the possibilities out there are pretty much close to infinity. So just whatever you want, yes, it's doable. It's just gonna take a little bit of time maybe, but it's doable. So if you have an idea to how to explain any working concept of Bitcoin, underlying technology, and do it in a 3D environment, and then just write it, and maybe you write to me, I'd be happy to try to work with you just on that. It's just one after one, we can explain all the stuff, right?
Yeah, one idea. I'm curious how hard that would be to build. Let's say in this world there are 10 nodes at different places, and you can see them, and your character has a phone, and you can send off a transaction, and when you send it off, from your phone, like it flies out, like some magic thing flies to the next node, and from there it flies to the other nodes. It kind of distributes, and then there's a miner somewhere who grabs all the transactions, puts them in a block, and then sends them off to the other ones. And you can kind of see visually in front of you, you can follow that around, that movement of information and that validation, and maybe there are other details in there. So that would require super completely custom graphics and interactions. So is what you're using here, are those existing pre-built models primarily,
mostly.
or do you, okay.
So
And then you add your own.
Yeah, then I just put stuff together, right? There is pre-built for almost everything. The pumpkin you're seeing behind me is by CQ at voltage.com. But she's a designer. But otherwise, I'm not gonna reinvent the wheel, right? If there's a good environment, just need to do something else. But the Bitcoin logo, it's perfect. But if you try to explain a concept, you're gonna use like a Raspberry Pi for a node. It's perfect. It's there. I'm not gonna design it. It's gonna be cheap. What is I find more less cost efficient is the stuff that you actually need to build. Like the audio book, I need to find a way to put the audio on it, so I need to learn about that. And because again, I'm not a dev, it takes a lot of time, but I'm learning. So I have no idea how much it could cost to actually create a like inside Bitcoin world where people can do what we are talking about. But that's why I'm calling for, hey guys, let's do us ourselves, and it's gonna be cheap because we're just gonna be the only ones spending time on this, right? It's gonna be free, but just very costly in terms of the amount of time. But yeah, we'll see that. But yeah, it takes some time.
Is it possible to also do like build a wallet inside of here? And I'm guessing it's probably going to be custodial, but is it or can it be non-custodial even?
Well, for now, I'm using VRChat, as said before, but if you use any other app or if you create your own, you can do whatever you want, right? Everything is possible, but it's all about the cost. I think that's the real problem.
I'm curious if you, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just short comment. You can always start simple, start crappy, and then improve it over time.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, there definitely must be a nice way to implement sats or bits.
It will be sats.
Because there's the Lightning game, isn't there, on mobile? Bitcoin Bounce or something like that, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And you can just play a game and earn sats and stuff like that. So it's always a nice incentive to have.
I was just gonna say, I'm curious if you've ever tried MaxMSP.
What's that?
So when we think about like audio or like gaming, I'm not huge with Unity, but I've done a few projects, and MaxMSP is basically like an audio plugin, and you can drag these little boxes and create effects or do voice or whatever. And a couple of years ago, the company Cycling 74 was actually bought by Ableton, which is a little bit more robust in terms of like music production and audio quality. You can even get like a free month or 6-month trial, or they do like a lot with education or groups like this. If you just I can message them for us if you want. And people will help you too. They have like, they're based in Berlin, but they have some locations in the US as well. But that could be cool too, to just talk to people who know a lot more about this. And I think their roots are in open source. Before they were bought by Ableton, originally it was free. And I think they would be pretty into projects like this. So if you want help with the audio, I could potentially help with that. I've done it a little bit, depending on how crazy we want to get. And one thing, I won't lie, my phone did die. So maybe you already talked about this. I know you brought up WebGL. I wonder if anything with Three.js might make it more accessible so people don't have to use the headset. And I think, I may be wrong, but people might bring up the argument about Facebook and Oculus and privacy. I know there's not a lot of folks who feel great about that. So maybe.
I think the most WebGL platforms know just you can run it on a desktop. So I still have to try to do something there, but I think it needs at least to be accessible on a desktop and on a headset. For sure, Oculus are gonna be cheap and stuff, but it needs to be very widely accessible. So that's why I'm starting to think about maybe stopping using VRChat and using simply a web browser to do stuff. Yeah, I'm interested about any kind of collaboration. If anybody have any skills with Unity, with anything, I said before, I'm pretty new to this, so I'm just trying to learn and build stuff. But we have this little channel in the Bitcoin Design Slack, which is VR, so feel free to speak there, guys.
Yeah, I think also, Bitpaint, you need to like post some screenshots of these things, because like just like as a desktop wallpaper or something, that looks really awesome, and it can get people excited as well, just to like, you know, the Bitcoin pumpkin and
I need to do a media kit, a better one. Yeah,
just screenshots so that people see some work in progress.
Yeah,
and the rabbit as well. The rabbit definitely has to be in one of the screenshots you post.
will do.
Right, we are on 6 o'clock. Well, 6 o'clock my time. The hour mark has gone. Did we have any final comments for Bitpaint before we officially wrap up? No? This is something I want to see this on a regular basis, Bitpaint. Like, you should be like almost every other design review saying you've got like a new room done and a new lesson, I should say, completed. So yeah, this is really cool.
Yeah, I don't like I haven't really interacted with anyone else doing like I guess there is the Lightning Strike game or something like this, but I haven't really played them. I'm not that into gaming and stuff, but it really kind of like it's really interesting to see how you can potentially like break out of these models and create these worlds and stuff. I don't get it fully, so like just having the exposure, and thank you so much for the presentation as well.
Thanks for having me. We'll
Thank
try
you.
to bring something maybe next week, but yeah, I'm really trying to finish something before, so maybe it will be in a matter of other weeks. But thanks for having me a lot. We'll see what this brings to us.
No worries. Thank you so much. All right, I'm gonna stop recording. So we're officially finished. But if people want to hang around